Hi everybody, it's Julia, your trusted travel expert from Travel Julia's Way, and I am actually talking to you this week about why I'm going to Peru. Now, it's not strange to be going to Peru. There are lots of amazing reasons to go to Peru. Obviously, Machu Picchu is one of the wonders of the world, and I'm so excited to go. I leave next Friday. But I guess the thing that's a little bit unique about Machu Picchu, or about Peru in general for me, is that I've avoided it. I've avoided it for a very kind of personal and tragic reason, so that's maybe why I don't talk about it very much. But back when I was 12, well, to age me, but 1989, my grandmother, who was a wonderful grande dame, world traveler, she was sort of my inspiration in life, apparently, even though I wasn't that close to her. She and my aunt, so my mother's mom and sister, were on a trip with a few other folks to Peru, and they had just been to Machu Picchu, and one of their last things that they were doing in Lima, or I think they were flying back to Lima, but they were flew over the Nazca lines, which are those very mysterious and strange large designs and or lines, drawings, but they're huge. They're like, 1,000 feet long and wide, that are out in the desert south of Lima, the Nazca lines. Well, unfortunately, their plane did not make it back. There were two planes flying back, and either their plane ran out of gas or hit fog. I am unsure now about the exact reason, but they hit a bell tower and the plane exploded and everyone perished. So that was obviously a very traumatic thing that happened to me in a formative time in my life. I'm very close with my mother, as you may know if you've been following me, and so this being her mother and her aunt, in a way almost out of respect for her and the pain that was for her, I have not wanted to go and not really made any plans or really thought that I would kind of ever go. I always knew I would go sometime, but I just wasn't excited about checking Machu Picchu off my bucket list for obvious reasons. My father did go. He died about 10 years ago, and he went, well, it was probably almost 20 years ago that he went to Peru. He really wanted to see Machu Picchu. He knew my mom was not going to go because that's obviously very emotional for her. So he led a trip with his university alumni group, and he actually got in touch with the consulate and stayed a little bit longer, or arrived a little bit earlier, and got in touch with someone at the consulate, and they took him to the village where the plane crash actually happened, and he met with people that remembered it, that saw it happen, or whatever, and came back with all kinds of stories, and he came back with local newspaper articles, and that was super interesting, but my mom wanted nothing to do with it, and it was also recent enough to when the actual crash happened that it was even uncomfortable for me. So when my host agency announced that they were taking a trip to Peru that would be guided, or not guided, but hosted by the head of our host agency, who is one of my dear friends, who is actually also Peruvian by heritage. She's from Canada, but her parents are both Peruvian, and so she still has family in Peru. And I just thought, okay, this is going to be a group of people that either know me or have similar interests to me, or similar, at least one common interest. They're all travel professionals. And, my dear friend is going to be going, and she's Peruvian. Like, this is the best chance I'm going to get to see Machu Picchu, and also to get to know the country that has always sort of had a bit of a negative connotation, or a sad connotation in my mindset. So I decided to take the plunge, and I am not only going to Machu Picchu, but I decided to extend my trip, because if I'm going to fly all the way down there, I want to see some stuff. I am not flying to the Nazca lines. I'm not going to stress my mom out that much, but I am extending my trip, and I'm going up to Lake Titicaca, which is I don't know if it's the highest freshwater lake in the world, but it's a very, very high altitude lake in Peru, and it's right on the border of Bolivia. So I'm also going to La Paz and to the Uyuni Salt Flats. And the Uyuni Salt Flats are really interesting because a friend of mine, again, about 10 or 15 years ago when I was living in DC, a friend of mine had been an embassy brat And so one of the places her father had been posted was in Bolivia. So she spent her high school in Bolivia. And after high school, or after college, she went back. And so I learned about Bolivia a little bit from her and the Uyuni salt flats. Uyuni is spelled U-Y-U-N-I. Look it up. It's ridiculous. The pictures are unbelievable. Her pictures, just an amateur photographer, sightseeing 20 years ago, were unreal. The professional photos are just mind-boggling. There's no perspective. It's super cool. So since I was going to Peru and going to be in Lake Titicaca, and then I realized how close Bolivia was, I made it happen. And so that's sort of my why. And that's why I always like to talk to my clients before I start a trip, because I want to make sure that I understand your why. And I want to make sure that I understand if you have, you know, either ancestors from that country or some sort of personal connection to that destination that is going to be extra special, you know, and make sure that you have the time that you need to experience that. You have the right experiences so that it's not traumatic for you. Like if someone had made me go on a Nazca Lines excursion, I would have been kind of upset if that was a mandatory activity. It's not, so it's no problem. But that's one of the reasons why I like to have a chat with people, because the why of why you're going to a destination is almost important as, you know, checking off things off your bucket list, because it's not always obvious, because there are those obvious bucket list things, but there are things underlying as well. So wish me luck. I will, of course, tell you all about how awesome I'm assuming the country is going to be when I get back, and maybe also from the road. So stay tuned, and I will talk to you when I get back. Bye.